All right, welcome back to Lost for Words with Lori. It is Tuesday. It is October the 3rd. We have moved into a new month, folks. Holy crap. And we just had a full moon again. Holy shiznit. So I hope everybody is doing all right. Unfortunately, your heroine has just gotten over the plague. I've still got a little bit of a headache this week. Yeah, I think it's a lot of allergies. It's kind of strange how that works because, it's fall here in the southeast, and we have a lot of flowering plants that happen year-round down here that I'm not used to, being from the Midwest when everything kind of freezes over. And I think my allergies are kicking, and so it's caused a bit of a headache. And I understand that there's some kind of viruses and flus and stuff going around, and I might have kind of caught in the tail end of that. So I've been kind of at the tail end of that. I've been kind of down for the count for a couple of days, but I'm feeling a lot better. This is my 6th anniversary of when I packed up my life and moved to North Carolina 6 years ago in 2017. And so I spent my anniversary on Sunday pretty much in bed, sleeping when I got off of work for my second gig, nursing a pretty bad plague. I was just really sick. My whole body hurt, and I was just puking and shitting, and too much information, I know, but God, was I not feeling good. And just dealing with just a whole bunch of just not good. So we were not doing real well here at the House of Misfit Toys. It kind of went around. Everybody here had it. But we're all on the mend now, and things are back to normal, so to speak. And hopefully that's the end of that. We're just kind of dealing with allergies, I think, for the most part. So, Sudafed, local honey, plenty of fluids and rest, and everybody should be back on the mend and getting ready for October. Lots of exciting things coming up and whatnot. And I figured it was hopefully time to get things back on track. 10 days ago, I gave you guys my last exciting news update about being engaged to my guy and how exciting all of that was. And before that, just trying to find balance and get back into normal routines and figure out what's been going on in your heroine's world, because, things aren't easy. And as you hear, I'm pulling the Sudafed out of the little pack here. But yeah, so I've been working on trying to get back into things and working on new material and new podcasts and that kind of thing. And one of the things that keeps kind of cropping up that I really kind of wanted to dive into a little bit today, especially because, life's not easy, and my growth journey and my shadow work that I always work on with therapy and with, my friends and with other things is just an ongoing thing, being a better version of myself. But something that's been popping up a lot lately is we talk about people who make assumptions and people who assume. And so I kind of wanted to dig into that a little bit today. And so we're going to talk about the words assume and the difference between that and presume. And then what kind of tails along on the end of that is suppose, I suppose. And I kind of want to dig into that a little bit and kind of how that relates to what's been going on in my world lately. Because, relationships with people, and it doesn't matter if it's your friends, your family, your significant other, or even yourself. And we've all heard the old adage, and I grew up with this, is that when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So I've been trying to break down a lot of that by defining assume and presume. And I know that when I have a conflict with my guy or with my friends and they say, well, you made an assumption. Well, what does that mean? And so I've been trying to break that down a little bit because I know a lot of times we have conflicts with the people closest to us because we make a lot of assumptions. And what does that mean? What does that mean? And so I looked into that. And to assume basically is to accept something is true with no proof. You think something's true with no facts. It's emotion-based. There are no facts. We make assumptions based on our feelings, our emotions, and we jump to conclusions. And we all do it. It's human. It's something that we all do. We just jump from point A to point B based on how we're feeling. And we accept that something's true and we assume. And we all do it. Nobody is immune to that. It's just something that humans do. We make assumptions based on how we're feeling, based on, you know, this is what we accept. This is truth, you know, because we're feeling that way. And that led me to go, well, you know, why? Why do we do that? And then I kind of went back to say, well, when I have a conflict with somebody and they go, well, you just assumed that. You didn't, you know, clarify. And I say, well, no, I didn't assume because, you know, I thought that was the case because, you know, you've done this before. And that brings up the word presume, which is based on a previous history or facts. You think something is true because a pattern of previous history, previous facts. You're supposing that something is the case because of the probability. I can be confident that this is fact because it's happened before. So that's the difference between assuming something and presuming something. I used an example of my bird. I have a cockatiel. He's 22 years old, if you can believe that. And I've had him for 18 years. It's pretty safe to say that I know most of his behavior patterns pretty well because I've had him for a really long time. So a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, it's safe to assume. And we need to change our language. We need to change the way that we communicate with people about things. I presume that my bird is ready for bed at 3 o'clock because of his behavior patterns. He gets crabby and he starts flying around and making a lot of noise at 3 o'clock because he's tired and he's overstimulated. That's not an assumption, that's a presumption. I'm presuming that that's what's going on with him because he's exhibited that very behavior for many, many years. And so I'm not assuming that he's crabby. I'm presuming that he's crabby, only because he's exhibited that very same behavior pattern for the last 18 years, that it's pretty safe to say that he's crabby and he's ready for bed. To assume that, now say that it's 9 o'clock in the morning and he's flying circles around the house and acting like a douchebag. Would it be presuming that he's ready for a nap at 9 a.m.? Probably not. That's an assumption. It's an assumption based on my emotions because he's driving me crazy. But it's going to be my responsibility to try to track down what's causing him to be in distress, right? And the only way that I can do that is to try to figure it out. Now, he's a bird. He's not a human. But it's my responsibility as a human when I'm dealing with other humans. How do I get to the bottom of that to not assume? And if you've been around long enough with me as a human on my podcast or as my friend in first world or second world or even in, you know, Talk Successful world, you know that I've been preaching to the choir about communicating and about being accountable. The only way to get around that is to communicate. And that's to be honest and to sit down and have conversations and ask the clarifying questions. And a lot of people don't like to do that because sometimes that means that we have to ask questions that we may not like to hear the answers to. And nobody likes to do that. Nobody likes to put themselves in a situation where if you're having a conflict with somebody, it's easier to assume that it's somebody else's fault or that somebody else is in the wrong than it is to sit down and say, hey, I need to ask some questions and I may not like the answers that are given to me because that might force me to take a look at my own behavior. And that's not easy, especially when you're in a relationship with somebody or you are close with a good friend. And I'm not trying to call anybody out, but, you know, I have people that I'm really good friends with. And one of them came to me not so long ago and said, hey, you know, I've been really struggling with this, but I feel like you're angry with me for something. And I just need to know because I care about you and I'm walking on eggshells and I feel like maybe I might have done something to upset you. And I really worry about that. And I said, no, I'm sorry that you might feel that way, but can you give me some examples of why you might feel that way? And they said, well, you're just not around a lot, or you're not talking to me like you used to, or I just feel like you're distant. And I apologized. I said, that wasn't my intention. I'm sorry that you feel that way. However, no, I don't have any conflict with you. And they felt a lot better about it. But again, unless they were to sit down and talk with you about it and ask those questions, they had a whole lot of anxiety for a few days because they just assumed. They assumed that there was something wrong without asking, how's your day going, or what's eating you, or what's bugging you. I've got a lot on my plate. I work 2 jobs. I have a relationship. I'm getting married. I have a lot going on that I stress about that a lot of people don't know about. And so for them to come to me and say, hey, are you sure we're good? Are you sure everything's okay? And for me to be able to give them reassurance and say, no, don't assume. And we had that conversation again today. It's all about communication. It's all about being able to ask clarifying questions so that you can be really clear, to be really transparent. And I've been preaching that to the choir for a long time. None of us are going to get it right 100% of the time. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to make assumptions based on our emotions, based on our past trauma responses. We are going to jump to conclusions, especially when our feelings are hurt. And it is hard to step back, and it is hard to take the emotion out of it and not make assumptions. And it is going to be hard to give people the benefit of the doubt when they've repeated behaviors, or they're learning and doing their own shadow work and trying to dig deeper and dig harder to make necessary changes in their world. And to not assume, even when you do presume based on previous behaviors. I did this very same thing this past week. I was sick, I didn't feel good, and I presumed based on previous behaviors that because my partner was doing something and it hurt my feelings once before, instead of asking a question, I jumped to the next conclusion and allowed it to hurt my feelings again. Again, it wasn't the case. But we're human, and we don't always step back and go, I need to ask questions. I need to open my mouth. I need to be the person who asks the clarifying questions instead of being afraid of the answers. And it's a work in progress. We're all human. We make those mistakes. And that brings us to the final thought about suppose. Suppose is thinking something is true based on some facts or some assumptions. And it's all based on perception. The synonym for suppose is a guess, right? I guess. I suppose. I guess. We have unwrapped perception a lot about truth, about perception, and people seeing things through their own lens. And at the end of the day, I think that's the hardest part for all of us to understand. I'm seeing the world through my lens. I'm seeing it through my own trauma responses. I'm seeing it through my own life experience. And sometimes it's really difficult for all of us to step back and understand that somebody else's perspective is the same thing. They're seeing it through their lens, through their perspective, through their experience. And everybody's experience and emotions are so different than ours based on what they've been through. And everybody's been through it and dealt with it or not dealt with it in their own way. And it's really hard to not judge that. It's hard to not judge or be patient with other people who haven't experienced growth or change or had the same, level of opportunities to have people around them to be patient or have the same opportunities to heal in the manner that you have, or to be impatient with other people's growth opportunities or lack thereof. And we do sometimes lose patience with other people when we get frustrated or we see them struggling and we recognize that they have a longer way to go than we do. And we sometimes have to give grace to them where we don't give that grace to ourselves. And that's difficult. And I struggle with that sometimes too, because I've really worked hard. I've struggled a lot. I started over twice now in the last 6 years. It's been a really hard path. And I recognize and I'm proud of myself for the successes that I've had. And when I see other people struggle and you want to help and you do recognize and presume or suppose or guess other people's struggles, and you do want to help, but you also have to reach out and ask first if they're even willing to help. You also have to step back and realize that not everybody is in a spot where they're willing or ready to hear what you have to say. And being a good friend sometimes doesn't mean offering unsolicited advice. It means making sure that they're ready to hear what you have to say. It's letting them come to you. It's giving them the space and the grace to be ready for healing, because not everybody is ready for healing. And it's recognizing that they're seeing the world from their own perspective. They make assumptions. They make presumptions. They guess just like you do. And that all we can do in the end is sit down and communicate with each other, is have those calm conversations when it's appropriate, step back, look in the mirror. So at the end of the day, it's all about communicating. It's about being authentic, transparent, and just being able to be the best versions of ourselves. So as always, I appreciate everybody listening. I hope everyone's having a great week so far. We'll just keep on doing what we do. I can't wait for the rest of the month. We got lots going on. As always, wash your fucking hands. Be a good human. We'll talk to y'all next time. Love y'all. Bye.